and welcome to this episode of Rating the News. My name is Vanessa Otero. I'm the founder and CEO of Ad Fontes Media. On this show, we rate news articles for reliability and bias using the content analysis methodology that our analysts at Ad Fontes Media use to create the media bias chart. So today we're going to go over articles. We're going to go over 3 articles, and they're about topics that are polarizing, as usual. These topics today are about laws affecting transgender people and universal basic income, both of which are on their own polarizing topics. So we're going to look specifically at how on issues that are complex and fact dense, thorough reporting is so important, and how just little bits of omission and selectivity of who you quote can really affect bias in less complete articles. So none of the articles today have, outright false statements or untruths in them, but we're going to see a really big difference in the reliability and bias of these articles nonetheless. So let's start with an exemplary article. And it is from the Desert Sun, which is out of Palm Springs, the Palm Springs Desert Sun. It's a local paper. And we're going to go through, and I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs to point out the things that this article does really well that would cause us to rate it highly for reliability. This will also give us a good background on the story to judge the reliability and bias of the other articles that we're going to read. Okay, we're going to read one from the left and one from the right after this. So the title here, it says, Palm Springs to put $200,000 toward transgender income pilot, but council reservations remain. There are a lot of words in that headline, but here that's a really good thing. But it explains several things that are a bit nuanced about this story. Let's just scan it really quickly. This is a fairly long article. Okay, not too long, but it really treats the issue well. It covers the issue well. So I'm just going to read the first couple of paragraphs and then summarize the rest of the story so we have a sense of what's covered in the article. The Palm Springs City Council voted unanimously Thursday to provide $200,000 to 2 local organizations that are aiming to launch a pilot basic income program that would provide money to transgender and binary residents. Next paragraph. However, they stopped short of agreeing to provide the much larger sum of as much as $900,000 that leaders of the organizations behind the project say would likely be required for the project to ultimately go forward, and expressed reservations about doing so in the future. So here are several sentences that are full of facts. Just fact statement after fact statement. We love to see that. That's high for expression and it's high for veracity in our rating system. So we're starting out really well, and there's no bias detectable as of right now that we can see. Right? Doesn't mean that there's no bias, but so far this is about as straightforward as you could cover this issue. Now, the next couple of paragraphs are about explaining what a guaranteed basic income or guaranteed income program is, and about transgender people and non-binary people, sort of a background explainer, and then more details about this program. So the 2 organizations say they are hoping to launch a guaranteed income pilot program that would provide between $600 and $900 a month to 20 people who live, work, or otherwise spend the majority of their time in Palm Springs. Okay, so now we just learned another 2 things. We know that it's a pilot, like they've said a couple of times here. It's a pilot program, $200,000. Launch a pilot basic income program, and they repeat again, guaranteed income pilot program. The pilot would also include another 20 transgender and non-binary people who would not receive the money and services, but would serve as a control group with the intention of determining the degree to which the payments and services are beneficial. So at this point, if that's all you've read in the article, you know a lot of facts about the story, and you know that it's $200,000. It's not $900,000 that they asked for, that it's a pilot program to just, to set it up, that there are 20 people in the test group and 20 people in the control group. Yay, we love having a lot of facts. Woohoo. So the rest of the article, there are even more facts, but there are also some quotes from people that are stakeholders or decision makers, like the council members who voted on this. So there are some quotes here. There's a couple of references to the organizations, DAP and CareerWorks, and they are looking for a share of $35 million that the state has budgeted to provide grants for entities to looking to set up guaranteed income programs around the state. So now we know another fact that the state of California has budgeted $35 million to provide grants to entities looking to set up guaranteed income programs. So there are more quotes and there are more facts. Our project's budget is estimated at about $1.8 million. And when looking at what other programs have been successfully funded have done, their local cities have provided nearly a match to that funding. So that's where this $900,000 came from. So they want $1.8 million total if they were to actually make this program happen beyond just the pilot. And then half of that would be matched, so that they asked for $900,000. So there are more quotes from folks in the Palm Springs City Council and the mayor who is transgender herself. And the mayor expressed some concerns about the ability of income programs to scale up. And there are several paragraphs about why she feels that way and what she said, and why the council voted for this $200,000 pilot program anyways. So we're pretty well equipped to evaluate other articles about this story, because we've got a lot of facts and a lot of quotes from folks who are directly involved in this particular vote, in this particular decision. Let's look at some other articles that are a little bit shorter and omit some fairly important things in ways that really contribute to left bias and right bias. So this NPR article says Palm Springs looks to create a universal basic income pilot for trans residents. So it does say pilot in here, okay? And then there's a picture of money. So I like to look at the pictures as well. What's the picture in this one? It said, well, this is a picture of transgender pride flags in Palm Springs. So, there's, a reference to transgender people here. And here there's an image of money. The selection of images can be important, and just little subtle things. If you're reading this and just glancing at it the first time, it's like universal basic income for trans residents, with money being given out. So it might be easy to skip over the word pilot here, but let's keep going. So the Palm Springs City Council has approved funding for 2 local organizations to develop a universal basic income program for the California city's transgender and non-binary residents. Okay, so this one is not quite as clear. It's funding to develop a universal basic income program, and it doesn't say pilot here again. It doesn't repeat that. It says the city council unanimously approved allocating $200,000 for DAP Health and CareerWorks in late March, but this was just a first step to develop the program, which would provide a regular, no strings attached stipend. So, as we read the rest of the article, we'll find things that indicate that the framing here is positive towards this policy. So here, we don't quite have all the information yet in these first 2 paragraphs that this is we don't get the sense that it's a temporary thing. They say developing a universal basic income program, and this was just a first step to develop the program, okay? So there are additional facts. 2 organizations are now in the works to design the pilot program, so they do mention it here. They aim to apply for a piece of $35 million in state funding set aside for universal basic income programs sometime later this year. All right. So then this is a shorter article than the last one, but let me point out a couple of other things here. The next sentence is the work to develop this program comes as conservative legislatures across the US implement laws targeting transgender people. So here, that's a factual statement. But of all the things that you could include in a short article about this story, that's sort of a jab saying, this program, is, as we will demonstrate, a positive thing according to this article. And conservatives have been targeting transgender people, which is a negative thing. So that's like one of the first. It's a fourth paragraph in this story. So you're already detecting a little bit of left bias here. So the rest of the article quotes heavily from people. Their factual statements, and the real statements from people who are talking about transgender and non-binary people's issues, and like poverty rates, and unemployment and job discrimination and health issues, right? So these quotes really focus heavily on proponents for such a program. Okay. There aren't any other facts that we learned from this other article, though. There's nothing about the fact that it's between $600 and $900 per person. There's nothing about the fact that it is $200,000 as a pilot program out of a $900,000 that would be required, or a full $1.8 million to fully implement it, right? So we're missing some pieces here. We also don't see that there is a test group and a control group, like the 20 people who will receive it and the 20 people who will not. Because of the shortness of this article, and because we're missing those facts, and because the bulk of this article includes quotes from people who positively support this particular legislation and the idea of supporting transgender people with a universal basic income in general, this really turns into a bit of advocacy. This turns into pretty squarely left bias. So let's go back and take a look at where we would rate these articles. Let's pull up our handy dandy blank media bias chart. So this Desert Sun article with the lots of facts and the minimally biased way of framing it, and the quotes which are from council members specifically about the implementation of this law. And we're going to put that towards the middle here, minimally biased and fact reporting. So this, again, exemplary article, top middle of the chart. Sure, there are things that you could find that might push it maybe a little bit left, but in some cases, some people might identify things that are a little bit right biased in that Desert Sun article, but generally we're going to put this really close to the middle. Whereas this NPR article, because a good 2/3 of it were quotes that were positively framing the policy itself and advocating for the policy in some senses, we'd put this over pretty squarely left, because left-leaning folks, like progressive and liberal folks, would tend to be on the side of supporting universal basic income, and or at least trying out a program to help transgender and non-binary people who are suffering from poverty. Let's look at an article from the right about this. Let's take a look at an article from Fox News. So this article says, California city to give universal income to transgender non-binary residents. Palm Springs will set aside $200,000 from the program. All right, here we don't even have the word pilot in here, and we say it's a California city. We don't identify it as Palm Springs in particular, but that right there can just be a tiny little hint towards bias. Like if you're conservative, California and California policies are just like, oh, out there left, right? So to give universal income to transgender, non-binary residents, no indication that it's a pilot, okay? A California city is planning to give universal basic income to transgender and non-binary residents. Doesn't say that it's a pilot yet. Transgender residents in Palm Springs, California are eligible to receive a UBI of up to $900 per month solely for identifying as transgender or non-binary, no strings attached. Now, you could read this without noticing that here it says the new pilot program will have $200,000 set aside for allocation after unanimous vote. It seems like this has been allocated, and transgender people are going to receive $900 per month. It also says solely for identifying as transgender or non-binary, no strings attached. You could read this if you're predisposed to like be angry about this issue as like you could just walk up to the city hall in Palm Springs and be like, I identify as transgender, give me that money, right? There's no indication that there's requirements, that it's a test, that there's a control group. Let's see if there's any of that in here. Yeah, shocker, there's not, right? The city stated that the program is only for individuals who meet a poverty threshold. And then there's a quote from former San Diego City Councilman Carl DeMaio, a Republican who served as a first openly gay member of the city council, who called the program outrageous and discriminatory. So there is a statement in here that says 20 transgender and non-binary Palm Springs residents will receive the free money funded by the taxpayers for 18 months. So it doesn't say that there are 20 people in a control group not receiving this, but it does say free money funded by the taxpayers for 18 months. These are just little rhetorical devices, right? Given the framing that, we found a Republican, an openly gay Republican. He's not in Palm Springs, he's in San Diego, which is a totally different city. But he thinks it's outrageous and discriminatory. That's a rhetorical device right there too. Like, hey, we found somebody who's on your side, who agrees with us, therefore we're right. It extensively features his quote about him not liking this program and why it's bad, right? Then you've got this line about 20 transgender and non-binary residents receiving free money funded by the taxpayers, okay? So it does say a 6-month design period will be the precursor of the program's implementation, in which the group mayors for a guaranteed income will be involved in providing guidance. So it says a 6-month design period and the precursor of the implementation. Let's see what else here. It says here, it does give quotes from Rostowski of QueerWorks and DAP Health CEO David Brinkman. So it does include quotes saying, why advocates who asked for this grant money, like why they're asking for it. So you can read this and be like, okay, this is, trying to be balanced here. And there's, again, quotes from Palm Springs Mayor Lisa Middleton, who is transgender. But it does focus on the fact that she doesn't agree with, she has reservations about the future of the program. Those reservations were also brought to our attention in this first article, okay? So again, like the NPR article, we have somewhat of an incomplete story here. So it says, our project's budget is estimated at 1.8 million, but what we're missing here are that it's $200,000 for a limited pilot that would require at least $900,000 that wasn't approved, and the full budget it does say that full budget is 1.8 million, and it's missing the fact that there is a control group. So what is the effect of not including all of those details in both the NPR and the Fox News article? Well, here with the NPR article, because there's such a big chunk of the article that's like, well, this is why transgender folks would need such a thing. And this Fox News article says, here are some extensive quotes as to why this is a bad idea from this guy and from the mayor herself, etc. The Desert Sun article essentially says Palm Springs is creating a pilot program of $200,000 to test out this universal basic income for transgender people. Okay, that's what you get from this Desert Sun article. But then from the NPR article, it's like Palm Springs is going to give money to transgender and non-binary folks. Happy face emoji. The Fox News article says Palm Springs is going to give $200,000 to non-binary and transgender folks. Angry face emoji, right? It's just a totally different tone. By selectively including the facts, the NPR article makes it sound like they're moving farther along and this program is much more developed than it actually is, but that's a good thing. And here, the Fox News article says makes it seem like this program is much further along and further developed than it is, but that's a bad thing. So there's another twist to the Fox News article here, which is that the original headline had an inaccurate statement. It said, notice that this one says, income to transgender non-binary residents. The original article from the Wayback Archive says non-binary residents regardless of earnings. That's not true. They did add a line in this new one that said, the city stated that the program is only for individuals who meet a poverty threshold. And then at the bottom, they say, oops, we updated this to include that was not true. And then they changed the headline. So we did ding the article for reliability because of that initial inaccurate statement. But we average out the scores because they did correct it. So where would we rate this Fox News article in terms of reliability and bias? So because of the extensive quotes and the framing that like this is a bad policy idea, we put it over in the hyperpartisan right area. And then for the NPR article, it's in the analysis opinion section, and for the Fox News article, analysis opinion section, but a little lower because we dinged it for the first inaccurate headline. So just really subtle differences. We really advocate at Ad Fontes Media reading articles that are the most fact dense and the least biased possible. If you'd only read the NPR article or the Fox News articles, and these are not terrible articles, right? They're just incomplete, not so incomplete that they're like propagandistic or misleading or anything like that, but their incompleteness really affects bias. They're omitting things that we'd need to know to have a complete picture. They're including quotes that are really selective that frame the desired narrative on each side. So again, exemplary one is the Desert Sun one. There's right-leaning libertarian Reason magazine called the Fox News article to task for saying and said, no, Palm Springs isn't giving a basic income to transgender or non-binary residents. And it, again, gives a more nuanced, detailed explanation in response to this Fox News article, but then does also recognize that other news outlets didn't cover this great either. All right, that's it for this edition of Rating the News. We really want to thank you for watching this episode. If you'd like to see more of these videos, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to be notified when new episodes are uploaded. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you next time.